US forces struck targets across Iran overnight, marking 13 consecutive days of attacks. President Donald Trump is hinting there's more to come, telling a US media outlet the Iranians have, quote, haven't received enough pain yet. Iran says it struck US assets in the Gulf region in response. And UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres is warning against escalations, saying the region is, quote, teetering on the edge of the unimaginable.
For 13 consecutive nights, US forces have struck targets in Iran following the effective collapse of an interim truce aimed at ending the conflict. U.S. Central Command said the strikes targeted military facilities and capabilities used to threaten commercial shipping. Iran's military implied that it's facing new U.S. weapons.
Every capability, every weapon, every contingency that the Americans had planned and stockpiled for World War III to engage the world's major powers, all of it was brought to the field against the Islamic Republic, and all of it was used and deployed.
Trump's latest move to ramp up pressure on Iran, threatening to use frozen Iranian assets to pay for damage to cargo and shipping. Iran's foreign minister hit back immediately, calling it an incendiary precedent. The United Nations also warns that hostilities between Iran and the U.S. could spin out of control.
The situation is getting out of control. It's teetering on the edge of the unimaginable. The region is being pulled into an ever-widening circle of confrontation. One crisis feeds another, one escalation triggers the next.
For now, neither side seem inclined to shy away from confrontation or escalation. Following Wednesday's attacks by Iran-backed Houthis in the Red Sea, Trump has now promised major military punishment for Iran.
And we can now speak to Siavush Vanchbardemi. He's a senior lecturer in modern Middle Eastern history at the University of St. Andrews and joins us from Italy today. Now, after 13 nights of bombings, what are Trump's options now?
Well, we don't really know what the end strategy here is. It really looks like some form of extensive punishment strategy or punishment initiative against Iran for that initial strike on 2 oil tankers nearly 2 weeks ago, which started this latest sequence of confrontation between Iran and the United States. There seems to be a list of targets on an expanding amount of Iranian territory that the Americans are striking every night. The Iranian retaliation is very consistent, I would say, striking American installations across the Middle East. There seems to have been an uptick in American targets in Erbil, in Iraqi Kurdistan, for example, last night. And of course, we have this Yemen situation, the Bab el-Mandeb situation brewing up again. So it seems to be a very coarse, tit-for-tat military strikes without a clear end game or objective here, other than what the Americans are saying, trying to persuade the Iranians to allow shipping through the Strait of Hormuz through this offensive.
Now, you say it's hard to see an end game there, but one issue that is consistently being raised on and off is a ground offensive. Do you see that on the cards, that the US will put boots on the ground there?
Not yet. I mean, any sort of ground offensive will be extremely expensive in terms of military personnel and military hardware, I would say. The death count, there's a potential for a very high death count. And we're starting to count weeks until the American midterm elections. So I don't think a ground offensive can happen before that, because that could have a very, very direct effect on those midterm elections, because, there could be a very high human cost of such a strategy. So I'm skeptical. But again, unfortunately, Trump has basically created uncertainty and complete unpredictability as part of his modus operandi. So we can't really tell here.
We are seeing attacks now not only on military targets, but also on infrastructure, including that Iran's claim that it has struck an Amazon data center in Bahrain. What does that mean?
Yes, well, I mean, this is increasingly becoming a very unscripted and unregulated, if you want, confrontation. The Americans are striking bridges. We saw it, and those bridges cannot all be military bridges. They're connecting major Iranian cities and used by ordinary citizens on a daily basis, particularly around Bandar Abbas. Then we are seeing Iranians striking desalination plants, the Amazon data centers, as you were saying. So it's really becoming a conflict of attrition and retaliation, which doesn't seem to have many rules in them. And then we have this very vexing issue of Iranians striking what they claim are, American assets, business assets like Amazon, military assets, but they are on the soil of countries with whom it has diplomatic relations. That's Kuwait, that's United Arab Emirates, that's Qatar, Saudi Arabia. So, of course, this is the other issue. Kuwait, for example, is in this very strange position of bearing the brunt of Iranian military attacks and then summoning in the Iranian ambassador to Kuwait to protest about it. So it is a very strange war, if you want, which defies, if you want, the conventional definitions of what a conflict is.
Do you see all these countries that you've just mentioned, the Gulf states, let's call them, is there a risk that any of them might be drawn directly into this war?
Well, they are walking a very tight. I would say that for many decades they were sitting on two stools, if you want, rather tall ones. One was, of course, allowing a major American military presence on their soil, all of them, with all these bases that are dotted around the Persian Gulf. And the other, it was a strategy of trying to find a diplomatic entente and understanding with the Islamic Republic, having diplomatic relations, allowing the Islamic Republic to have extensive business interests in their countries, particularly the UAE, acting as mediators, as Qatar has. And this strategy hasn't really worked because, as you see right now, they are turned into, unwillingly, I would say, they're turned into the actual physical battlefield, this confrontation between Iran and the United States, with both sides not really respecting their sovereignty and their authority to that extent. So they will have to go back to the drawing board there in terms of what their strategy was of sitting between these very two tall stools, of course. The Islamic Republic and its crisis in the past 20 years, and this United States and its very strong military presence in the Persian Gulf, which, of course, is a backdrop of what we're seeing at the moment.